1979 and all that. What were the causes of the Iranian Revolution and what are its effects? Maybe like the French Revolution, it's still too early to say, despite the repressions and the deaths of protesters. Now, relations with Poland stretch back to the 17th century. So, what's that all about as well? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
The relationship between Iran, then Persia, and Poland is one of those long, lightly threaded stories of history that benefits a closer look. It begins in the late 16th century when the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and Safavid Persia met as equals on the diplomatic stage. At King Sigismund III Vasa's Kraków wedding in 1587, a Persian emissary stood among the foreign envoys, a reminder that Poland's sphere of influence had reached far beyond Europe. Proof of the bond was sealed in ink, preserved in centuries-old letters and documents. Both courts saw value in cooperation, whether against common rivals or through trade linking the Baltic to the Silk Road. Kinship between the two peoples didn't rely only on shared politics. Polish nobles embraced Sarmatism, the belief that they descend from the ancient Sarmatians, an Iranian-speaking people of the Eurasian steppes. In Persia, where ancient Iran was seen as the cradle of many noble lineages, this resonated greatly. As dark times befell the Poles, their Middle Eastern kinsmen helped any way they could. After the failed November uprising of 1830-31 and then the January uprising of 1863-64 against Russian rule, Polish political refugees were given asylum by Qajar Iran, integrating them into Iran's military and administrative life. The 20th century saw the story's most dramatic chapter unfold. In 1942, Iran became a lifeline for tens of thousands of Poles evacuated from the Soviet Union alongside General Władysław Ander's army. Soldiers and civilians alike found food, shelter, and a chance to rebuild. Even during the Cold War, warm relations endured. Communist Poland maintained diplomatic and economic ties with Iran under the Shah that lasted until 1979, when Iran's identity was altered by the will of its Islamic population, a change that persists to this day.
I'm delighted to welcome back to the programme Elias Aghili Dehnavi. He's a political scientist based at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. Welcome once more to the programme. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Thank you so much for inviting me over, and I will be more than glad to contribute to today's discussion.
Great.
Like always.
Great. Let's go right back to the start of the clip and to someone seeing this scroll, the record of the king's marriage, second marriage, may be puzzled by seeing a Persian ambassador there. We can see the beautifully scripted letters exchanged from the courts. Can you outline for us the origin of this relationship between two faraway countries?
Well, I've always told this to my students, and also whenever I'm having a discussion about history and politics, I always say that nothing is born in vacuum. So there's always a background in any historical or political event. Back then, the historical relation between Iran and Poland, or let's say between the kingdoms, was merely based on mutual goals. They could have been military goals, they could have been commerce, they could have been anything but hard politics. Yeah. So back at that time, the Iranians or the Persians, let's say the Persians, and the Poles had some common enemies. They could, unite their forces to fight against the forces or the enemies that have been threatening their existence, like the Ottomans. Yeah. So they share this crucial, important common basis, and they build their relation around these sources of friendship and sources of cooperation. So I remember some of these historical lines in the Persian history books cited by Shah Abbas, King Abbas, a very famous king, the remnant of the Safavid dynasty that set Isfahan as the capital, and the city that later became the one of the most important homes for the Polish refugees in 1942 and 1943. He once stated that it's a pleasure to join our forces and fight against the common enemies with my Polish brothers on the battlefield. May we join in heaven, and may we join in peace together.
The fashions of the Persian aristocracy, the Persian military, seem to echo into the Polish aristocracy as well. Was this just a fashion, or was this idea of a common origin, the Sarmatian origin, was that current in both cultures?
Well, whenever we are having some sort of military cooperation or commerce cooperation, if they reduce the level of, reduce not in a bad term, but in a political or historical term, they reduce the level of correspondences to common concepts. The common concepts can be like the transfer of fashion, transfer of way of clothing, way of communication, or even the literature. So such correspondences have piled up in adopting fashions, or let's say way of communication or way of trade from the Persian side. Unfortunately, I have witnessed few Polish influence or Polish fashion.
Yes, it came one way, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. In the Oriental atmosphere of Persia, but I can see and witness the traces of these historical and social correspondences in Poland. But unfortunately, evidences or facts are too few, because at that time, there were few people or few scholars who could have transcribed all these events. But if I want to summarize and wrap up my statement, I should say that it is a matter of spilling over, like when you spill over. So when you continue your commerce or your security cooperation with another nation, ultimately you will end up adopting.
Yes, adopting some sort of
the mutual fashion.
Yeah. Does this carry on in the 19th century, and especially in the 1940s, when a huge influx of Poles came from Siberia and settled, albeit temporarily, in Iran? Was this cultural, historical relationship remembered, or were these just two foreign peoples happening to be in the same place? Did the Iranians remember who the Poles were, and vice versa?
I can say that unfortunately at that time all those historical incidents were not well remembered.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the time of turmoil. 1942, World War II, and all these political, economic and social turmoil for the countries involved technically prevented the people from having a direct way of analysis or a direct way of remembering the history. So at that time, the cities involved and the societies involved in welcoming the Poles were merely kind of thinking with themselves that, okay, so we have to share our hospitality with these people, and we don't care where they come from.
Because hospitality is obviously a great thing in the culture.
Because hospitality is a well-embedded part of the Persian culture and tradition, no matter what part of history we are referring to. This matter and the concept of hospitality is well embedded in the heart of the Iranian. So when more than 120,000 Polish refugees entered Iran, or let's say the Kingdom of Iran, they were more than welcomed by the local people, not because of the history or not because of the people were thinking about the history, but because people inherited that notion and the concept of hospitality. They knew that it's the time to help their fellow humankind. So it's the time to give support unconditionally. So it was more of a traditional and cultural thing.
And what happened to the kingdom of Iran during this time? 1940s, oil fields occupied by the Western powers. You mentioned that it is undergoing a state of turmoil. When did this particular upheaval start? Was it after the discovery of oil and influx of Western oil companies to
most probably
loot?
Yes. Most probably yes, because the first.
So that would be when about?
It was well before. It was during the 20s.
Yeah.
That in Khuzestan province. The correct Persian pronunciation is Khuzestan. It was one of the first well oils that was discovered in the Middle East by the British scientists or by the British engineers. So they gave them the means to extract oil, while the Iranians were the owners of this oil reservoir. So the Western countries, firstly the Britons, started to enter the Iranian territory in search of oil and the related goods. And later they started to influence the Iranian government and political system. Firstly influenced by economic incentives, and later directed by political and security reasons, because then we enter into the Cold War era after the World War II, and the confrontation between the East and West bloc was centralized in Iran. So Iran was regarded as one of the most important spots where the big powers or the big blocs were wrestling.
And before we start to discuss the ramifications of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, what were this factor about Western influence, exploitation? Did that play a huge part in fomenting a young population, as you said before, into this kind of revolutionary ideal? And then we have the Khomeini religious element. What was the interplay between the two, economic and religious factors?
Well, it was a mixed, let's say, condition. There were elements of different, factors involved at the time. Prior to 1979, and after the spring of selling oil and the economic prosperity, Shah government could have mobilized the funds, the state funds that was given to them through the oil export, to the students, youngsters, to pursue their studies abroad. So that population could be kind of familiarized with the Western concepts and Western way of doing science. They could feel that they are a part
Western
of
fashions, I suppose.
Western fashions, of course, and they could feel that they are part of the international community, all funded by the Shah government. So some of these, people stayed loyal to Shah because they received the fund, and they received everything they had was kind of because of the fund they received from Shah. And the rest started to question. Then they started to raise question that now why are some segments of the society less developed or less benefited? Because they were studying the Western philosophy, and they were getting familiarized with some concept like Marxism or the social equality or the means of production.
We'll have a look at that, all those factors, in our second clip and discuss this huge event in 1979.
Sure.
With the year 1979 came a change so great its effects are still felt today. Iranians from all walks of life, secular leftists, bazaar merchants, students, all under the leadership of Ruhollah Mousavi Khamenei, overthrew the pro-Western monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Ayatollah Khamenei's fusion of Shiite theology and populist rhetoric reshaped Iran into a velayat e mutlaqah state, where ultimate authority rests with a supreme cleric, not an elected president. Since then, the clerical establishment and its security apparatus, especially the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, have maintained a tight grip on power. Now, 47 years later, the tables have turned on the Ayatollah regime. A new wave of protests erupted late last December as economic hardship, Record inflation and currency collapse boiled over into nationwide demonstrations. What began as a protest over deteriorating living standards quickly morphed into a broader anti-government unrest, spreading across cities and provinces and drawing millions to the streets. The regime in Tehran responded with deadly force. Numbers vary, but civilian casualties of the Ayatollah's deadly crackdown are estimated to be in the thousands. Civil unrest isn't the only problem on Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's plate. Tensions between Iran and the United States of America continue to rise following Operation Midnight Hammer, carried out last June, which had aimed to impede Iran's nuclear program. Now, with the US Navy parked in its maritime backyard, Tehran is forced to negotiate a deal with Washington or risk a wider conflict. Given the volatility of the situation, the future of the Islamic Republic of Iran hangs in the balance. The regime that once came to power through revolution is now threatened to lose it the same way.
You mentioned the part of the cause of the Islamic Revolution in 1979 as being economic, this corruption of the authorities, a young educated elite. But we tend to see it in the West, I suppose, as this religiously imposed, religious-driven revolution. Is that accurate?
Well, let me briefly go through the pillars of the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Mm-hmm. The Islamic Revolution was actually driven by political exclusion, socio-economic factors, and also a strong desire to preserve the cultural and religious identity. I would say it was
of Iran or Islam, or how.
Yeah, that's what I want to explain. That's what I want to explain. It was more oriented towards preserving the religion identity.
Yep.
Because the previous, dynasty, Pahlavi dynasty, was well building on the cultural and the Iranian Persian identity. So, the third pillar, the strong desire to preserve the cultural and religion identity, was more highlighted. And as I said earlier, it was more oriented toward the, preservance of the religion identity. Yep. So the religious figures and the religious elites impose this way of thinking on the society that this Western influence is endangering the religious identity of the society. So people are forgetting their Islamic roots and they're forgetting about their Islamic practices, and they cannot freely do that. So the Western, that's their rhetoric, that the Western influence is directing this religious and religion identity into the margins. So we have to rise against this, and we have to create our own modern renaissance.
And was this a success, or is it just one of these things that it's always an ongoing revolution that you have to keep going?
Well, it succeeds because it spoke to the realities of that time. At that time, it succeeded because, as I said, it could speak to the realities of that time. But now, the same realities are not kind of working. We cannot make an equation.
So the idea of having an external enemy, the great Satan, America, little Satan, Britain, that's no longer a currency that you can use in Iran, or it's being eroded by reality, by a new generation coming through.
Well, actually, the idea of the great Satan was fundamental, because you need to build this ideology around a centralized concept in order to kind of, let's say, mobilize all the opposing forces in the system. So we had the leftists at that time, we had the religious figures, we had these elites who have studied abroad. So one concept could gather them all around the flag. And that was the idea of great Satan, or the American imperialism. And
also the Iran-Iraq war, huge war.
And that followed.
Yes.
And that followed, and it even fed this Islamic revolutionary ideology that you are not fighting only for Islam, but you are also fighting for your country. You are also fighting for your identity. So two identities were again clashing, and they result to this historic battle between the Arabic identity and the Persian identity. So they were trying to kind of renovate those old stories, because we all know that the Sassanid dynasty was overthrown by an Arab invasion. So the Iranian authorities at that time were trying to revoke the Iranian fighters or the Iranian society by resorting to the historical concepts. So whenever they feel the urge, they will renovate those historical narrations.
So has the revolution come from a kind of globalist cosmology to convert the world into a form of Islam, to a kind of, has it imploded and now they are rejuvenating their national heritage?
Well, actually they are moving against this globalist movement. Let's say they are trying to impose their own reading of the religion. It's a very unique and eccentric reading. And I can say they are the inventor, and they are the protector, and they are the preacher of this newly invented system of reading. So one part of this system evolves around this idea of religion and Sharia. So you cannot question the core. And the politics is driven from this core. So the politic driven from this religious core is holy. So we cannot fight this all these political concepts, because they have a holy origin. So what happens now in the global arena or the regional arena, that these politics driven from a holy source should be spread over, because this is right, this is orthodox. And any social movement or any social upheavals that question this holy politics is regarded to be unorthodox.
Yes, heretical as well, I suppose.
That's some sort of a kind of middle-aged reading of this phenomenon, and it is not wrong.
What's the so? Are the same factors that drove the original Islamic Revolution in 1979, these economic, political, and religious factors? Are they still present in modern day Iran, which accounts for the revolution, the uprising of this young generation that we saw a few weeks ago, that was brutally quashed?
Yes, unfortunately they were brutally crushed, and they were calling for their dignity, they were calling for a normal life, they were calling for their very rudimentary rights, and what they received was a repressive, brutal force. I mean, yes, the answer to your question is a big yes. I mean, the same, it's something like a déjà vu, if I can phrase it that way. Something like a political or historical déjà vu. The factors that directed the Islamic Revolution is now directing another uprising or another revolution, because there are gaps, there are deep gaps. We've got temporal gaps, we've got socioeconomic gaps, and we've got a very big narrative gaps. This narrative gap is even more important.
A final question to you. We have to wrap our discussion up, unfortunately. Do the authorities have the power, the military power, the security apparatus to survive these sorts of mounting pressures, do you think?
Well, my answer to the question has two sides. First of all, the regime is still controlling the fundamental institutions. So we cannot expect a rapid fall or a rapid loss of power. But on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, we are seeing an erosion of legitimacy. The regime is losing its legitimacy step by step. So this legitimacy is eroding. And the fall of legitimacy will eventually lead to the collapse of the system. So the system can rotten from within, and it can eventually happen.
Elias Dehnavi, thank you very much for coming on to our program. Great to have you. Wonderful conversation.
That was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
That's it. Join us next time. That's Tuesdays, 9:35, 21:35 CET. Join us on TVP World, as usual.